Hey, it's Seth Matlins, Managing Director of the Forbes CMO Network, and I'm sitting here today with Arielle Garcia, who until September was the Chief Privacy and Responsibility Officer for Worldwide, which is a huge media agency inside of IPG. It's got operations in over 100 companies, 100 countries rather, over 5,000 employees, and represents clients from Accenture to American Express to GoPro to Spotify and J&J. Now, Arielle, thank you so much for being with us. As we get into it, while you took this position, as I understand, because you saw an opportunity to contribute to what you've defined as a more responsible future, you left in September because you'd come to the conclusion, and I want to quote you from something you recently wrote, that the industry appears absolutely determined to sleepwalk into an existential crisis. Can you share with our audience what you see as the existential crisis and what you see the cause of it being?
Sure. So at its core, what the industry is facing is a trust crisis. And the way that I think about that is that there's three kind of vectors. The first is that people don't trust advertising. And so the reason for that being, there's a tendency for the industry to tout the fact that people are fine with exchanging attention for free content and services. And yet what the industry doesn't like to recognize is that at some point we changed that deal a bit, right? And it's no longer just attention. Now you're exchanging personal data for the incremental benefit of more relevant advertising. And we never really asked anyone about doing that.
Promise of that incremental
benefit. Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece of the crisis. The second is that businesses can't trust their partners. And so in my piece, I speak to this very specifically in terms of the large holding company model and how essentially the incentive structures prevent agencies from truly acting as agents that are advocating for client interests, right? And
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me just rewind so that there's real clear clarity. When you say that businesses can't trust their partners, we get a little bit more specific on which types of businesses and which types of partners.
Sure. And to be clear, I do think that this is not unique to holding companies, but where I spoke specifically about it was in relation to the large agency holding company model.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that advertisers, the clients of those holding companies, can't trust their agency partners. And
so advertisers can't trust their agency partners to do or what?
To act in their interest consistently. And I'll explain and granted, some of this is not net new, but I've certainly seen a shift towards, and I talk about commoditization in my column, as the agency model shifts away from like the retainer-based fees, which are not without their own challenges, right? But they do incentivize long-term relationships with clients and delivering strategic value. Mm-hmm. And more revenue is obtained through commission or through these more opaque arrangements and incentive deals with big platforms, things like that. That transactional nature that comprises more of the commercial construct really causes some friction between the agency's need to fulfill their obligation in acting in client interests versus their short-term self-interest.
Right. So take us back again to what the definition as you see it of this existential crisis is. Is it, I think you've articulated the cause, which is an absence of economic incentive alignment, right? Or in fact, the absence of economic alignment creates an absence of trust, if I'm understanding that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It like along the way, because of that, the misalignment of incentives, you have fractured trust across each vector, right? And the third prong that I was going to say was also that big tech has gotten too much power, and we see that broken trust with their users as well, right? Where there's been this unfettered prioritization of driving engagement at the expense of, most recently, we saw the case brought against Meta for ignoring its detrimental impact to kids and teens. So each step along the way, it's those economic incentives, the commercial constructs, the business model of the industry that is fracturing trust with consumers, with brands, and really preventing us from moving forward.
So it sounds, I want to get back to what you just ended on, which is to say moving forward towards what, but it sounds like what you're saying is that to use nesting dolls, right, where a smaller doll sits inside a smaller doll or a larger doll, et cetera, that there's kind of a nesting doll, a trust issue across nesting dolls. Yes. Agencies and clients, which say advertisers and their audiences, which is, say, consumers for simplicity's sake, and then tech companies sitting kind of as intermediaries or disintermediaries, as the case may be, between all of them. Is that right?
Yes. And with tech companies, obviously, the challenge is, as I mentioned, they've amassed too much power, because it's not only that they're intermediaries in terms of the advertising technology landscape, right? They're also directly involved in every aspect of people's daily lives. So they sit right in the center of everything, and they've amassed so much power and control that really, if you ask, do people actually have meaningful choice over their interaction with these platforms? The answer is oftentimes no. And when you ask advertisers whether they actually have meaningful choice, their sentiment is also no. So that's the kind of biggest piece of this puzzle, right? Because a lot of the rules of the way that all of this works are written by very few companies.
Right. And companies at scale, and it trickles down to, even small business enterprise and the individual consumer. Within that, I actually am wondering if say the CMO can't trust her agency, why do those agency partnerships persist? And what keeps that economic absence of alignment from being addressed?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of things here, right? The first is that the digital environment has gotten so complex, and so complex to the point that it almost appears to be by design. So yes, marketers do need agencies to support them in navigating this space. Part of the challenge and the frustration for me was some of the conflicts of interest prevent agencies from actually being able to guide them through that space fully with their interests in mind.
Can I interrupt? Sorry. I mean, the media commission model is not new, right? It's
correct.
How the partnership was established.
Yep.
I don't know, decades, if not a century ago. So what makes it worse now, right?
Yeah. Sure. So a couple of things. The most pressing being the fact that I think marketers think that they have a greater handle on the incentive arrangements than they actually do, right? Even if you take a look at the updated ANA media buying template, oftentimes the rebates and incentives that are spoken about in the MSA need to tie to client spending or services that are provided to clients. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. They don't really speak to enterprise level arrangements, especially ones that don't tie to spend. So let's say driving product adoption, like a particular product that a partner has. It's not really about investment volume. It's just about pushing towards a new product or way or tactic. It's not doesn't necessarily need to be tied to dollars. Now, the argument would be marketers want efficiency. There's a lot of critique about how the process is very procurement driven. There's appetite for keeping pushing fees down, pushing media costs down. And totally, that's a valid point, right? That certainly doesn't help things. It indeed could incentivize a shift towards looking for those types of arrangements. So I think part of the issue, frankly, is that from the marketer's standpoint, okay, well, if we're achieving what we need, and procurement, if we're achieving what we need to, we're keeping the costs where they are. If the agency needs to make themselves whole and it is not violating any of our explicit requirements, I'm going to let it go. And I do think that that is the case in a lot of instances. And the reality of that is it's not about the money itself. It's about what it does to the agency's ability to be objective. And it's about what it does to compromise the agency's ability to advocate for client interests. And I don't think that there's sufficient understanding of how great that friction can be.
Do you not? I mean, because I will share that as somebody who has been both client and agency before coming to Forbes, I always wondered where the agency's fiduciary responsibility to get the most efficient bang for the buck stopped and started when their livelihood depended on that commission construct. And perhaps I helped in my own way perpetuate the problem you're talking about. But I do think people understand that friction exists. And so I'm wondering, given that I don't think there are any surprises for anyone except the consumer, and I want to get to them in a moment. But what do you think then stands in the way of resolving this?
The continued focus on costs and near-term results, near-term measurable, visible results, absolutely. And on both sides, right? Both on the marketer side, because it's a big thing to start unwinding. Like the way that I'm thinking about the ecosystem today is it's easy to talk about efficiency and to worry about how campaigns will perform. This will be a good segue into the talking about consumers piece, but that's because marketers aren't confronted with the reality or it's not openly talked about that they're probably paying for bad, unethically collected data to reach oftentimes fake people, oftentimes on unsafe websites. And this is the world that we're kind of living in now. And that's a lot for them to unwind.
Yeah, no, unethical is a very, it's a loaded phrase. It's an important phrase. It has legal consequences as well as ethical ones. When you talk about unethically collected data, is that by design, by default? Open the aperture on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is that we like to refer to data as consented when people don't opt out, right?
Right.
And so when I talk about unethically collected, I'm talking about would a reasonable person expect their data to be collected and used and shared in the way it's being shared. So it's really putting the person at the center of this, both from the standpoint of what would they expect, and also from the standpoint of the value exchange. What do they receive in exchange for that? So, I was at a conference last week and I decided to, in preparing for it, I was reading through the FTC had launched commercial surveillance rulemaking last year, and they opened it up for public comment. And I downloaded all the comments and I filtered out the lobbyists and the industry groups, right. And I started looking at what people are saying. And there was one comment that was from a young woman that is a teenager that said ever since she was a child, she's had and got her first smartphone. She's had data collected on her. She remembers when she signed up for Snapchat and for Instagram, seeing how much data they're collecting and not understanding why. And that now as a young woman, even her menstrual tracking app is collecting all this sensitive data, and she understands that it's used for advertising. But even when she sees ads that are not relevant to the things that she's interested in and tries to use the controls, the I don't want to see this controls, she still gets served those ads. And she says, I'm worried. What will my life be like as an adult? And so that divide between what the industry says is, delivering more relevant advertising, the promise of precision being tied to effectiveness, and this diminishing return that happens when you cross the line between relevance and exploitation, and you don't consider the context of certain data, and you don't consider what people actually expect, that divide is the challenge here. And so that's why, from my perspective, a lot of this goes back to putting the person back at the heart of all of this, like being human about it. And that's something that somehow has gotten lost. And again, I do think that ties back to commercial incentives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we get to the end of the interview, I want to again quote you from the piece that led me to reach out, which is, you say, as things stand today, the industry is incapable of overcoming these challenges without intervention in the form of regulation, independent research, and oversight. So from your perspective, having identified the problem or speaking out about a problem that I think many are aware of, who can drive the change? And even more importantly, what is it going to take for the vested interest to become participants in driving the change from your perspective?
Yeah, I have such a strong perspective on this. So marketers have so much power to set the expectations here. That's where the money is. That's where things start. That's why I thought that there was so much power in joining an agency, right? Sitting between billions of dollars and these platforms that control everything. So marketers have the power to demand transparency, to set the standard, to hold their partners accountable, to break the dynamic where agencies are parroting back what the platforms are saying. What they need is to be educated and empowered in order to do that. So that's what I'm committed to helping do. I think that they need to not be scared away by the complexity, and to understand that at the end of this, they're not just going to see their costs go up, the effectiveness of their ads go down, and their job go out the window. And truly, I don't believe that that's the case. And so that's what I'm very hopeful for, is that through empowering marketers, they're able to set the right tone, and that'll have knock-on effects that move the industry forward.
So they who control the money can control the conversation.
Correct.
From a regulatory perspective, who do you see playing that role? The best position to play that role?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I don't know that it's one thing or another. I think we live at we're looking at the intersection of a couple of different things. There's the privacy and data protection piece of it. There's consumer protection, and then there's the antitrust piece of it. So that's where I think you see the FTC's fairly rigorous agenda, the CFPB also doing the same, and they're coming at it from a consumer protection lens, which I do think has been effective and productive, in that they're really looking to prioritize mitigating harm, especially to people that are most vulnerable. And I think once marketers start to pay attention and tune into what harms they're trying to get at there, it's really something that everyone should be rallying around, because we're talking about protecting the same people that comprise their customers. Right.
So let me let you have the last word here, which is to say, if having taken the very bold position of saying enough is enough, I cannot be part of this from within, and leaving a huge platform at because of moral concerns, which is quite impressive, if I can say that. What's your message to the CMO, to the marketer today that you think might help them coalesce, because it's probably not going to be any one, but a community to affect change here? What do you want?
So I'm going to hone in on something you said, because you said it was because of moral concerns. And while I would love to say that I'm just like a person that is on a pedestal of morality, it's deeper than that, right? It's the fact that these moral concerns are directly prohibitive to our industry's sustained growth. And that's the message that I want CMOs to take from this, right? That this is not just about doing the right thing so that we can feel good when we go to bed at night. Certainly that's a part of it. But this is about doing the right thing, because at the end of the day, doing the right thing, doing right by our customers, doing right by our clients, that is how we grow.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for this. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Arielle Garcia.
Thank you so much.